I am not an artist. Even when I started elementary school, my focus was on academics. This is largely because of my parents and the weirdly competitive elementary school I went to because of its quote unquote gifted program. The point is that art was never really on my mind at this age. Even in this picture, I remember drawing these circles to demonstrate some sort of math concept. Only every now and then would I do art, mostly out of necessity. This is a painting my mom was inspired to do after watching some videos that I helped her with. It was the closest at the time to me voluntarily painting. It's not an incredible work of art, but it did introduce me to art at least. I remember I had a lot of fun painting the whole background of the canvas blue. Later in 5th grade, I did this painting at my friend's birthday party. I specifically remember the guiding person at the studio. He pointed out the yellow dots I put in the dress, and he thought it was really pretty, which made me feel more inspired than ever before to do art. It is a very bad painting, but the point was that I felt very confident doing it. After doing art occasionally throughout childhood, I only recently started doing some again. This was the first painting I did back in the fall of an outlet at someone's house. I was reluctant to paint at first, but I ended up really liking it. The person really hyped me up, and I felt really confident that it was a pretty good piece for someone who never usually paints. I showed my mom a picture of the previous outlet paintings, and she liked it so much that she wanted me to paint one in our house. Feeling really confident, I painted this one of Calvin and Hobbes, and I brought it home. As you can see, it's not very intricate or shows a lot of extreme artistic prowess, but I was kind of running on a painting high at the time. After a long time of gushing about how I was really proud of my beginner's painting skill, that same friend gave me this gift for my birthday. It's the most thoughtful gift I've ever been given. It's just a couple of different paints and 2 different brushes. I took it as an opportunity to step out of the box and try something new for me. I also really didn't want to waste his gift. This was the first thing I painted with those gifts. As you can see, the Calvin drawing itself isn't bad, but the colors around it were not good and the idea was not that good. I went from being really cocky about my previous paintings to kind of crashing and burning on this one. Even if discouraging, I think it was a good start, and I was still trying things out at the time. A few days later, I painted this. To this day, it is my favorite of all the paintings I've ever done. I just had to do it on paper, which made it more difficult, but I still think the gradient is pretty good considering my level of painting knowledge at the time. This painting made me feel more comfortable with painting again, and I considered it a pretty high high after a pretty low low. Riding on this painting confidence, I decided to expand my painting collection as if I was a real painter. I went to Walmart and bought a couple paints and paintbrushes. This is when I recognized the possibility of using other mediums like pens and markers that I already had access to. I realized that you don't always need fancy materials to make something look good. Because of all these new materials I bought, I was feeling ambitious. I decided to do an impressionist painting for my history project modeled after this very difficult picture. It would be a challenge, but I wanted to get out of my comfort zone during this quarantine. I've always feared being boring and only doing things for productive purposes, so I thought this would be a good time to branch out. This is how far I got with that painting so far. Unfortunately, as you can see, I stopped working on it a lot. I think because I started thinking of it as schoolwork like my history project. That made me not want to do it. And it's good that I realized that I should spend more time doing things that I do like because otherwise I won't want to do it as soon as I label it as work. A couple days into quarantine, inspiration struck again. Me and some friends got this amazing idea to paint a bunch of album covers and eventually make it into a large collage. I thought this was an amazing long-term project idea for quarantine, so I started this sketch of Lil Uzi's album, Love vs. the World 2, and it was extremely difficult. This is one of the paintings I probably put most of my effort into, so I wanted to show its progression. The sketch was honestly probably the hardest part. It was hard to get the proportions correct. I experimented with different mediums here, like colored pencils and highlighters to get a neon effect. There I realized that it's important to look for alternatives even if you don't have the materials in the first place. This is the final product, and I was very proud. My favorite part of this piece was doing some splatter paint to make the white stars. The splatter paint weirdly felt like a gift to me for the quality of work I did on this one. I was really determined to make it very high quality so it would fit in perfectly with my collage idea and everything would be perfect. After that kind of intensive album cover, this is the second, much easier one I did. This is where I realized that taking breaks was going to be really important for the quality of my paintings. I didn't want to fall into a trap of doing one good painting and the next being bad. It's harder to see the effects of breaks in things like studying, so I'm glad I reinforced this conclusion through painting. While I really loved the idea of the album collage and plan on continuing it, I wanted to paint something original. I wanted to laugh. I asked a friend if I could paint a funny picture of him. This was one of my favorites that I put a lot of effort into. I wanted it to be accurate for my own amusement. The face was very challenging to draw, and I know I should have tried, but maybe next time. Still wanting to have fun on my painting journey, I painted this. It's Isabella from Phineas and Ferb, who is known for being very cute and innocent. So I decided to make her look more edgy. I spent like 6 hours on this painting. I was more proud of my creativity on this one rather than the difficulty of the painting itself. The proud feeling I had after I finished this is what made me like painting so much. However, I realized that I could be getting burnt out from painting. That's because I classified this piece as a failure, but it's important to recognize your failures. I wanted to try something different from painting for this, using different mediums. As you can see, I used a highlighter to try to shade the shadows of the face. While you can barely tell it's a face, I'm happy I tried something new. Eventually, this was a strong sign to me that I was painting too much. This piece is the last one I did before I took a longer break. I think the logos look pretty good, but a little rushed and messy. I found myself feeling like I had to paint, thus making the quality go down. However, I am proud of this painting, at least for the creativity and idea behind it. And finally, here's a little photo shoot of all I've painted. I think it's important to make the best out of dire situations like Corona, to try new things and focus on not feeling guilty that it may or may not be productive or whatever. I ended up learning a lot of lessons like I mentioned throughout this, and I think it's important that we think of this time as an opportunity rather than a burden.